Hello and welcome to Car File. Now on today's programme we're looking at the number 5 and the 3 letters BMW, focusing on that car that every self-respecting executive wants to drive, the BMW 5 Series. And what better way to start the whole thing off than with the lairiest of them all, as Fran Robinson sees if she can tame the monster that is the M5.
The Daleks, Godzilla, Darth Vader, Dracula, Frankenstein, Hannibal Lecter. What have all these got in common? Well, one thing is, they're all monsters. Well, let me introduce you to another monster. Yes, you're right, doesn't look like one. It's a saloon car, and it's made by BMW. Let me say this again, this car is a beast, and one of the few clues to give it away is the badge at the back. Still not convinced? The only way I can prove it to you is to take it for a drive. Now, once you get behind the wheel and fire this baby up, the car starts to exert a certain force on you. It's almost subliminal. You can't feel it, you can't see it, but you know it's about to happen. The only way I can describe it is by calling it the Jekyll and Hyde effect. And no matter how mild-mannered, strong-willed or restrained you are, you will succumb. You will succumb. Hide. No, Jekyll. Hide! Jekyll. Hide! No, Jekyll. Hide! Jekyll. Hide! The M5 at first glance seems understated. It looks like a normal 5 Series saloon, but looks can be deceptive. There are clues throughout. Big wide multi-spoke 18-inch wheels, a slightly deeper front spoiler, and the quad exhaust tailpipes, all indications to its illustrious heritage. This car belongs on the open road. It needs to be driven. No, it begs to be driven, and driven hard. It's like a wild animal fighting to be released, and all you have to do is put your foot down and hear that engine roar. The performance is staggering. The 5-litre V8 400 brake horsepower engine will catapult you from 0 to 60 in about 5.1 seconds, if you can find a road grippy enough, while the top speed is limited to a mere 155 miles per hour. With all that power and a weight of nearly 2 tons, you need some stopping power. And BMW have fitted the biggest brakes on a 5 Series to date, and boy, do they work well. I didn't know they were that good. Now, if all that isn't enough for you, there's always the sport mode. No, please, not the sport mode. By simply pressing this switch, the car takes on a whole new set of characteristics. It's almost like finding out the spotty boy next door's a stormtrooper for the SAS. The steering becomes heavier, the car seems more firmly rooted to the road, and the performance is even more responsive. Don't ask me how it's all done. All I know is you no longer have a beast on your hands, but a monster with a serious attitude problem. One feature I really like is the way the mirror tilts down when you're reversing. It's to stop you hitting the curb when you're parking. That's nice. But what happens when you overshoot your exit on the motorway, which you will do in this car with the speeds it's capable of? I mean, it's going to be a real bugger trying to see when you're reversing up the hard shoulder. It's not going to be much use then, is it? See, it's this car giving me all this attitude. This car just inspires confidence. The steering is impeccable, acceleration savage in any gear, and you know you can corner with confidence with those big wheels firmly planted on the road. Oh no, I think I'm falling in love with this monster. I need to get out. I need to think straight. I've just got to get my breath back. No, I need to get out. Oh my God, I've got to think straight. BMW don't use the M badge on just any old car. The M stands for BMW's Motorsport department. There have been 2 previous M5s, both straight 6s. The last M5 was killed off in 1995, so it may have taken a while, but the wait was definitely worth it. So why did BMW make this car? I think it's because they can. They just love a challenge to build the best performance saloon car in the world. Do you know, this car's not like a monster at all. It's like Muhammad Ali in his prime. Beautiful, elegant, fierce, knocking out all the competition. So watch out, you rivals, because this car floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee.
Cool.
You know, I like that last bit, but you can't just say it's the dog's
Now, always one to keep an eye on his wallet, Ian Royle's been testing the efficiency of the 530 diesel against their counterparts, the Audi A6. Chink, chink.
I have a problem with diesel cars, and that problem is I just don't like them. People can tell me how good such and such a diesel car is until they're blue in the face, how many miles to the gallon they get and so on. It matters to me not a jot. That noisy clatter at tick over, plumes of murky smoke coming from the exhaust, yuck. I'd rather ride my son's battery-powered motorbike, to be honest. However, my mind was swayed a little when I drove the new Audi A6 with a 2.5 V6 turbo diesel. Smooth, responsive and powerful, adjectives you wouldn't normally apply to a diesel car. So we've decided today to bring together the Audi A6 and the new BMW 530 diesel. Now, both of these cars sell by the bucket loads in their petrol variants. Audi are well known for producing cracking diesel cars. So, is Audi's crown slipping a little with the advent of the new BMW? We'll see. Now, as soon as you're in the Audi A6, you know you're driving a quality car. The cabin is classy, spacious and luxurious, and the finish is absolutely superb. All the materials used are top class, and that just matches the exterior design of the A6. Surely one of the most handsome executive cars on the road today. The A6 has a top speed of 133 miles per hour. It'll do 0 to 60 in just under 9 seconds, fast enough for most busy executives. And the ride and handling of the A6 are more than adequate. It soaks up poor road surfaces with ease. And remember, almost uniquely in this class of car, the A6 is front-wheel drive. Now, most people buy diesel cars for their excellent fuel economy, and here's where the Audi wins hands down. It'll do 28 miles per gallon urban, 53 extra urban and 41 to the gallon on the combined cycle, and that could give you, if you drive it sedately, a range of about 800 miles to the tank, and that is fantastic. So the Audi remains a class diesel act. It's powerful, it's responsive, and it is quiet at most speeds apart from at tick over. It's very impressive. How will the new BMW 530 diesel compare? The first thing you notice about the BMW is the power that this new 3-litre 6-cylinder common rail diesel engine kicks out. It produces 184 brake horsepower with 287 pounds of torque, and that makes it feel a lot nippier and more powerful than the Audi, although performance figures suggest that the 530 is only marginally quicker than the A6. With the BMW having substantially more power than the Audi, progress is fast and perhaps easier than in the A6. You can rev right up to the 4,600 RPM red line, and there's hardly any turbo lag, just a slight flat spot at around 2,000 RPM. Handling is sharp and nimble, and you can really hustle the 5 Series fast round country lanes. So I've had a chance to drive both of these cars and they are both seriously impressive. The Audi will cost you in SE trim £29,000, the BMW in SE trim bit more expensive, £30,500. The Audi has the better fuel economy, the BMW more power. The Audi is the newer model of the two, but I think if it was me and I had to have a diesel as my car, I'd go for the BMW. Diesels are getting to be seriously good cars, and depreciation on these cars is excellent. Your accountant or finance director will be delighted if you bought either of these vehicles. And I think I'll keep the keys to the BMW if you don't mind.
Well, that's it for part one, but right after the break, Richard Hammond will be testing the 5 Series against the might of the Australian Holden GTS. Plus, we'll be getting the lowdown from the bods at BMW about the brains behind the 5 Series. Welcome back to Carfile. Now, Richard Hammond's been in search of a car that's a worthy adversary to the M5, and it's from down under. It's the Holden GTS, and it's a monster.
Two different cars now taking two very different routes to the same destination, and that destination is to be a car that's pretty much everything to everybody. It's got to be supercar fast, it's got to have room on board for 4 adults, and I do mean room, not all screwed up in the back, and their luggage, and it's got to look good. In other words, it's got to be a super saloon, and this, the BMW M5, is the benchmark super saloon, even an ultra saloon. It is big, it is handsome, it's built by BMW so it shouldn't break, and under here there is a colossally powerful 4-litre V8 engine. It pushes out 400 brake horsepower, and it boasts more valves per cylinder and camshafts than you could shake a laptop computer at. And so, by way of complete contrast, still trying to do the same thing, from Australia, this, the Holden HRV GTS R. It's a big, flamboyant car. If you think it looks a bit like a Vauxhall Omega, that's because, well, it is a bit like a Vauxhall Omega. Quite a lot of it is based on that car, but somehow they've squeezed up front a 5.7-litre V8 engine, usually to be found at the pointy end of a Corvette. Here it's mated to a 6-speed gearbox, but that's as sophisticated as it gets, because this is all about brute force. For instance, just 2 valves per cylinder, nothing like the M5. So, before we get to grips with this, let's check out the benchmark. Oh goody, we're driving big fast cars. From the moment you fire it up, you're aware of that V8. It's not exactly raucous, it's a very refined and sophisticated version of the usual V8 burble, and it is deeply sinister, a reminder of what you're driving. Not that you need many reminders of what you're driving, it is colossally powerful, but it's the way it delivers that power that is so engaging. At low revs and when you're just cruising and being gentle, it is creamy smooth. Start to press on, and boy, every single movement of your right foot has an immediate effect in terms of bringing the horizon closer. It's simply a machine that is designed to get from one place to another very, very quickly. And if as you're cruising along it's not going quick enough, then there is the sport mode. I press a button, thus. And I'm not rewarded with just a few subtle little changes. Oh no, it's the equivalent of pressing the button on the Batmobile that puts the wings out and the missile shields over the windows. It's unbelievable. It lowers the car and its suspension. It remaps the engine for sports performance. It even weights up the steering so it feels more like a supercar to drive. It's an astounding piece of kit. I'm not wishing to be stereotypical about it, but it is a very typically German engineering solution to the issue of making a big, fast car. It goes extremely quickly, but it doesn't make a song and dance about it. It simply gets you to the next place more quickly than you would doing probably anything else, which is very different to the Australian take on the same problem. Now, it might be vulgar to talk about figures in such a refined company, but blimey, have a look at these. 0 to 60 in the M5 comes up in 4.7 seconds, and it goes steaming on to 100 miles an hour in 10.6. All of which would be brilliant if it weren't for just one thing. It's as though BMW tantalisingly give you a glimpse of all this performance and then say, no, you cannot use it. because the traction control is ridiculous. It's nearly as powerful as the engine. And I don't mean that it's just a bit of a pain, you can't go as quick as you want to go. What I mean is, if you're pulling out from a junction in a bit of a hurry, and perhaps there's a lorry coming the other way, if the BMW M5 decides, nope, you're using too much power, chum, that's it. It cuts the lot. It leaves you dead in the water. It's a nanny state. Now this sounds much more like the kind of V8 we might be used to. It is an enormous noise, and you can't help but blipping with the right foot at every available opportunity. But despite the noise and the extra capacity, 5.7 litres over the M5's 4 litres, it ain't as quick. No siree. Not by a massive amount. 0 to 60 is in what? 4.9 seconds. 0 to 100 dash is in 12 and a bit seconds, so it's only a second or two here and there. But on paper it makes a difference. As a drive, you do notice that it just doesn't feel as quick. Mind you, whereas the M5 almost hides its power, and particularly with that rather overbearing traction control takes it away from you, the Holden glories in it. The traction control, what there is located behind this little flap where incredibly you can turn it up or down depending upon just how leery you feel. Occasionally its rather less than salubrious roots do shine through, such as the interior. I think it's Le Boudoir de Tarte is the style adopted, rather nasty bits of plastic that don't always fit together particularly well. The steering though is great, it feels just weighted up enough, and the driving position not too bad. Because I've said it is a little bit raucous and a bit grunty, and it takes a more low-tech approach than the BMW, might lead you to think, well, it's a bit of a brute to drive. But it's not. In actual fact, the whole thing adds up to a surprisingly sophisticated car. It feels very well screwed down. There's huge amounts of grip. Both of these cars will set you back around £50,000 on the road, but start to add on the bells and whistles, and particularly in the case of the BMW, you can expect to pay the thick end of £60,000. So, both of our cars arrive at their supercar destination by their different routes. Ultimately though, if you and 3 other people need to get from one place to another by road as quickly as possible, it's the M5 that's always going to be your fastest mode of transport. The Holden though is at least a little bit more flamboyant. There's more of a sensation of speed, and that for me is what it's about. After all, to use either of these vehicles to the limit of their capabilities means you'll be breaking a lot of laws several times over. And that brings me to the final point, which is, if it's illegal to use the things anyway, and if I was spending the best part of £60,000–65,000 on a car that boasted supercar performance, I'd want it to look like it could do 200 miles an hour even when it was parked. So why not leave the supercar performance to the supercars and the saloon car characteristics to the saloon cars?
Now, to find out a little bit more about the 5 Series, we caught up with BMW's Chris Willows.
5 Series is really the core of the BMW range. It lies between the 3 Series, which is our biggest volume range, and the 7 Series, which is obviously much smaller volume, but at the very high luxury end of the market. As a result, it's an extremely important series for us. The current 5 Series is the 4th generation, the E39. We produce a range of engines, 6-cylinder and 8-cylinder engines for it, topped off by the M5, and also an estate car version, which we call the Touring. The M5 is a particularly special car. We produced our first one back in 1984, and with that we took the standard 5 Series, if you like, the 5 Series 4-door saloon car, put onto it some pretty trick suspension, which made it a really a more sporting car in the way it handles, in the way it responds. But under the bonnet lies the real secret of an M car, which is an engine which has been almost hand-built. The first one had a 24-valve engine, which effectively came from the M1 supercar from the late 70s, producing 286 brake horsepower. That was nearly 3 times as much as the entry model in the 5 Series range at that time. And the same with the next 5 Series which came, which trickled over 300 brake horsepower. And this current car produces, from its V8 5-litre engine, 400 brake horsepower. So enormous performance potential, but yet not in a racy, rorty, sporty way. I mean, it can be driven in a sporty way, but actually you can tootle through town in 6th gear at 1,000 RPM and it will pull cleanly. It's a really sophisticated businessman's express. The people that buy 5 Series are, generally speaking, business people or family people. Average age about 42. I mean, averages are always dangerous. Of course, there are younger ones and older ones too. But around 42 tend to be family people, or perhaps just progressed beyond the family. But I think one of the important facts is that they want to drive a car which delivers a rewarding drive. It's not just to have a badge sitting on the bonnet, sitting on the drive. It's to have a car which rewards them when they drive, but also cossets them when they've had a hard day at business and want to drive home.
Well, that's it for this week, but on next week's Car File, we're featuring another German car, but one with maybe a little bit more style. It's the VW Beetle, so we'll see you next week.